All right, let's start going into the games and the takeaways from these teams. You want to get us started on Friday?
Yes, I will. And we'll go with the one that you attended, Notre Dame hosting Indiana. Notre Dame victorious in that one, 27-17. The final score of that game is a liar. It was like 27-3. Very late in that game, and Kurt Signetti, never quit type of coach, goes out there and tries to pull off some sort of a comeback. Wasn't successful in it. I'll just start with this. Is we talked about Notre Dame and their composition. And it was interesting watching how their defense was able to take the football away early, but Riley Leonard also threw the early interception, right? Like, they are a defense run the ball team, but the question has been the throw game. And if they do ever get behind, how does that work out? My thing about it is I'm not sure that they're going to play a game where they get behind. They've got Georgia coming up next. Georgia slightly favored, and that one is basically a pick 'em right now. They got a quarterback question. Like, I'm not sure this is a team that's going to stretch out a lead on them. Notre Dame looked really good. They looked very confident, a ton of energy. I know you were in that building, so you can speak to that. But, Indiana, for all the good things they had done this year, they met a team with a roster that was just better, and they had to go on the road to do it into an environment that was excited to host them. And Notre Dame came out there and proved what they needed to.
Yeah, I mean, we've said this. This was our big concern about Indiana hanging in that game in the first place was they've struggled when they've gone up against guys that are going to be pros, and Notre Dame bigger, faster, stronger, more athletic. And it happened over and over again because, they were just able to get to the perimeter and then take off on Indiana. Right. And like, I thought that could happen. It did. They were so physical defensively as well. I mean, it was just a really rough day for Curtis Rourke, who we've seen have some really great performances, been huge for Indiana's season. And then there was some they had bad field position because the punting was terrible.
Oh, yeah.
That was bad. There were some some calls that were interesting from Kurt Signetti, who had gone on College Game Day and said, we don't just beat top 25 teams. We kick the, blank out of them. And it was surprising then to kind of get a little bit conservative in the play calls. There was a punt late in the game that people were also critical of. So it was strange. Like, this was a very confident team as well, but it didn't play that way. The game, the approach to the game wasn't quite that. And again, I just think it had to do with Notre Dame's physical defense. All levels of that defense were on display. Obviously, Xavier Watts had the interception. That I think that interception and the Jeremiah Love 98-yard touchdown run, game was over, right? Like that if you only watched two plays from that game, those were the two plays. And the rest of the game was Notre Dame controlling the game the way that Notre Dame does. So I think there were a lot of people that probably have not watched a lot of Notre Dame since NIU. And I think they realized, this is a really, really good football team.
Yep.
And it's going to be a really interesting matchup against Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, because Georgia is very likely, I know Kirby Smart hasn't officially said it, but very likely going to be playing their backup quarterback, Gunnar Stockton, making his first career start against this defense.
Yep.
So it's a very, and then, Georgia and what they were able to do against Texas's run game, very effective against Notre Dame's elite run game. So we're going to get into that as we get closer to New Year's for sure. But it's pretty enticing when you look at that quarterfinal matchup.
I tend to agree with you there. And I like what you said about kind of the encapsulation of the game with the two plays where it's like, it just that was what it was. And for all that Indiana had done well all year, I will say I thought this was their worst offensive game plan. It was, slants and back shoulder fades and not much else. They didn't do a ton to help the offensive line protect Curtis Rourke. I'm watching other teams out here that maybe had some questions about their offensive line, and they rolled the pocket. They did some hard play actions. They just, max pro 7-man protections just to try to take the stress off of the offensive line. And Indiana didn't have a lot of that to their game. They came in and just kind of said, we're going to do what we typically do, which is not the approach that I would have taken knowing what Notre Dame was going to give them. But as you mentioned, Sugar Bowl coming up, Georgia sitting right there. And Kirby is going to get to do something that he did when it didn't even make any damn sense. And he's going to say, people don't believe in us right now. Because I do think there are a lot of people who have watched Notre Dame and said, you know what, they played really great ball and they came out there. And part of the reason I hate the discourse about whether Indiana should have been in or not, Notre Dame's a great team. And Kirby's going to go into his locker room and be like, we're underdogs. They hate us. And I'm curious to see how that works.
And they're already slight favorites, by the way. 1.5.
Well, it doesn't matter. They were underdogs when the lines came out initially, and that's all that matters. So when Kirby's smart, he will leverage that to his benefit.